Tell me about Wayne Thiebaud's influence on your work.
Yeah, Wayne is somebody who I feel like I arrived at late in terms of appreciation. It really wasn't until I began making paintings that had to do with food imagery and branding that I got to a place in which I really recognized, hey, look, there's this really clear connection between what I'm doing and this person from 60 years ago, 50, 70 years ago. Um, and even longer still before it dawned on me just how much I had leaned in. My first thought was, I'm making work that has to do with borders and has to do with geometry and gesture. And so Alfred Jensen, Jonathan Lasker, like these are the people I'm inheriting. I'm using impasto, it's really thick. Oh, it must be deriving from this. And then the logical antecedent for all of that was actually somebody like Thiebaud, where there's a kind of candy colored imagery that suits the cakes and the pies and everything else. And then the impasto and the body of the paint having a relationship there. And it all dawned on me that, look, these are abstract paintings that are also representational paintings. They happen to be about this subject matter, but then they also happen to be about paint. Like it was like this really interesting back and forth. So it's actually been a really clear connection for me.
Do you think Thiebaud has a kind of sustained influence today? I mean, what do you think of the reputation at this point, and the sort of what that work means now? After all these years, and the fact that he's still doing it, still painting.
Yeah.
He's somebody that in some ways is hugely popular, but not in some ways hugely popular, but somehow not well known on a scholarly level, except just until some recent work.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's interesting in that I feel like the culture today is kind of used to kind of like what you see is what you see, like Frank Stella's famous dictum, right? And
Sure.
that's somehow that's really stuck in the culture, that people take things at face value to be about what they're about. But the interesting thing for me with Thiebaud and the kind of color inflected in those paintings is that they're really undermined by the kind of application that he's after. The application that he's after makes those paintings feel like they're about the subject matter that he's after, but then about a myriad of other things. They're kind of about like the same things in a way for me that a Giorgio Morandi painting is about, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
about kind of being and non-being, about transience, about even one's mortality in a way too. Um, Thiebaud often places things that are just slightly out of reach. Like you feel like you could kind of like grab onto it, but then you feel like you couldn't, like it's like just outside of your grasp somehow. I think those are really important things painting wise, and whether or not people are aware of it or not, I think those are things that people are still thinking about in a painting. Like I think about the way that Catherine Bernhardt makes a painting where there's like, here's this floating sneaker or floating French fries. And it's like, oh, well, that's kind of the way that a Thiebaud, he'd position something like that. And you'd understand that it was like out of grasp somehow. And I
That's a
even,
fascinating comparison. I mean, that's so interesting because it is, you're right, it's about positioning.